Hey there. Before we get started, I just wanted to come on and ask you all a favor. In our research, we've discovered that the vast majority of you do not actually like and subscribe to our podcast. And so, if I could ask you to do so, I won't ask you for anything else. And I promise to make this podcast the best I can every day. Me and the team really strive to do that for you. And so, if you could do this for us, we would be eternally grateful. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Mickelle Weber, founder and auteur of House of Peregrine. Expat, immigrant, pioneer, none of these were a fit, but Peregrine describes what we are all about perfectly. Those that craft their life story with intention. I've spent the last 6 years in awe of the life-changing connections and stories I have experienced while living abroad, and believe it is time for this adventure to be recognized, celebrated, and elevated to the life stage that it is. Through these interviews, I hope to connect those living internationally more deeply to both the place they are living and with themselves and those around them. We cover everything from international finances and meaning-making to global parenting and relationships to make your time abroad more intentional, edifying, and full of beauty. Find us at houseofperegrine.com, where you can find more ways to connect with the ethos of Peregrine. I hope you enjoy today's guest. Let's get started. Today we have Katja Aegerter, who is a psychologist and mental health professional specializing in the impact of childhood mobility on mental health. She has had extensive personal experience and expertise to support globally mobile families and adult third culture kids. She and her husband share 2 children and have moved to 4 countries together as a family for his assignments with the Swiss Foreign Service. Her personal experience with moving her family to new countries led her to find that there was very little research on the effects of global mobility on children. This realization and her own experiences led her to conducting her master's research on the subject and is now earning her PhD on the effects of global mobility on third culture kids. I am so happy to have her on the show to chat about how to navigate a change of country with kids. I'm hoping today to bring out together a framework that we can use to do this intentionally and with great care, creating meaning in the madness, and maybe learning how to explain what this is all about to our kids and maybe even to ourselves. Thanks for coming on, Katja. I'm so excited to have you today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yes. I would like you to, I think you're the best person I know to explain what exactly we mean by a third culture kid when we say that.
Mm-hmm. So a third culture kid is usually a child who moves around during their formative years, meaning that they live in other places than either their own passport or their parents' passport places. So anywhere but their own passport places, and that during the formative years. And the funny thing is that usually this third culture, the term, can be misunderstood. I mean, it is misunderstood by a lot of people because they're thinking of the actual definition of culture. But the third culture doesn't really refer to the traditional sense of culture that we have, the traditional meaning. But the third culture describes more these commonalities that all of these children have that move around. So this sense of not belonging, this identity struggle, this arriving in a new place all the time or saying goodbye to an old place. So if you would put together a TCK, let's say from Japan, and a TCK from Spain in the same room, they would probably have much more in common and much more to talk about than their actual peers from their passport countries. So that's what this third culture, this term really describes. That's what the third culture is, this joint mentality of moving around.
That's actually really amazing because I actually never have heard it put that way, and it makes so much sense. Okay. Yeah, even among adults, I think that I felt that sense in my own life of having more in common with someone who's from across the world than where I grew up.
Yeah, same here.
That's so cool. Can you tell me, when we spoke before, we talked about there being at least 2 types of people in the world, those with the nomad gene and those without. Can you tell us a little bit about your theory about that?
That is a realization that I came about when I was younger, because I'd always had this restlessness in myself. And the rest of my family, my mom, my sister, they just don't have that. So at some point I came, and everybody was always waiting for me to get to the point where I also have this this longing for settling or for being somewhere, for staying somewhere. And I mean, in the 42 years of my life, I've never had it. So I came to the realization in discussions with other partners who move around and with other friends that there must be these two types of people, I mean, at least. But when it comes to this topic, these two types of people, the ones who really feel comfortable settling somewhere and staying somewhere, and then the other ones like me who really start feeling restless after 3-4 years in the same place. And so I think it's important to have this realization and to have the awareness which group do you belong to? And it's okay to belong to this group, actually.
Yeah. Do those types of people sometimes marry each other?
Yes. I've heard a lot of stories about that.
What happens? How have you seen people you work with navigate that difference?
I've seen really positive examples, but I've also seen the challenging examples where relationships really broke up over this whole topic. And I think the only way to navigate it, and that is my idea. I mean, I'm very lucky to be in a relationship with the same mindset partner, but I think the only way of navigating it would probably be to compromise on living one part of your life like this and the other part like that, so that everybody gets what they need to feel comfortable in their body and in their lives. And I always find it so sad to see, and that is, I mean, my parents are the best example for that. My dad had this gene that I have. I think he inherited it to me, and my mom didn't. And so he agreed to settle, even though he was really restless. And at the end of his life, I wonder whether he ever asked himself the questions, what if I had lived the life that I had dreamed of instead of living my wife's dream? So I think it's important for both parts of a relationship being able to live their dream life, at least for a part of their life or for a few years, and then try to agree on a model that works for you, for your partnership, for your relationship. Because I just always thought it was so sad. I mean, my dad, in the end, he was able to enjoy through me. He came to visit us. I mean, he was the most frequent visitor in any of the countries, even Kyrgyzstan, where we lived before. So he got a little part of that still in his life. But I always wonder then, will you, at the end of your life, will you ask yourself this question, what if I had lived the life that I dreamed of? Yeah.
And is that what you say when families come to you and in the middle of an assignment, or let's say a job, or however someone comes to living it outside of a country coupled or as a family, is that the perspective you often give them? Is this is a phase, you're not here forever. And so maybe you can compromise on this one, and then the next move, you really need to do it together. Like, is that a bargain or something people can make if partway through they realize they do not have that gene? I can imagine that could be devastating.
Yeah. And I mean, a decision to either move abroad or stay somewhere is, in my opinion, always a family decision. It's never one person in a family deciding over the heads of the others, but it's always, and I'm even speaking of including the kids. So I always think this has to be a family decision, and really putting all the information out on the table and all the emotions and all the advantages, disadvantages, and then really openly discuss about it, and then see how do we all feel with this.
Yeah. So start. Yeah. So walk us through that a little bit. I want to get to that, but will you just really quickly tell us about the countries you've lived in and just give us a brief overview of your travels so far?
So I was born in Germany, but never felt like I belonged. As I said, I always had this urge to get out. So the first opportunity that I had, I got out. I did an Erasmus. This is an exchange semester in Spain. And that's where I met my husband, who's Swiss. And so I returned back to Germany, finished my studies, and then I moved to Switzerland. So that was my first country where I moved to be with him. And after 1.5 years in Switzerland, I just said, this is all too small and too unexciting. I need to get out of here again. So together we moved to the US. And my daughter was born in the US then. We lived in the US for another 2 years, then moved back to Switzerland. I had my son. And then we moved to Kyrgyzstan from Switzerland. And from Kyrgyzstan, we moved here to North Macedonia in the midst of the pandemic. And yeah, so those were the stations of our life. So my daughter, who is now 11, she's lived in 4 countries, and my son has lived in 3 so far. And the longest time, both of them lived in Kyrgyzstan. So they really struggle with, where am I from? Where's home? With these questions.
Yeah. And during that, I think you've kind of come up with maybe a process, your family and also professionally, that you've seen that works for involving every member of the family. And so can you walk us through that a little bit? Like from when you have we got to get out of here, or a job is calling, to moving, can you walk us through what you found is a really nice process for families?
Yeah. So, I mean, for us, it makes it much easier that we are deployed by the Swiss Foreign Service. So usually we know that our terms are 4 years, and we really transparently communicate that to the children as well. So they always know, okay, we have another 2 years, we have another 1 year. It's not that we constantly talk about this so that they kind of never get this feeling of being able to settle down in a new country, but it is part of our conversations sometimes. Yeah. And so for us, the whole process starts about more than a year before we are being posted to a new country. So we are finding out about the new open positions, a little more than a year before. And so already before even the new postings are being published, we talk to the kids about it. And I talk to the kids about it. And they are aware that in that month of the year, the new positions will come out. And we talk about my daughter, for example. She really doesn't want to move from here now. And we are up for a next transfer in summer 2024. So she really feels settled here. She has a good group of friends, which is also the age that she is at now, because her focus is more on peers and less on family as it was when she was younger. So we talk about the topic a lot. And then when we get the list of postings, we discuss it together as a family. And we hear the ideas of the kids as well. I mean, we really ask them now, which ones would you, if you had the choice, which postings would you apply to? And so we talk about that. And even if it's the most silly places that they suggest, we take the information and we tell them we think about it, and you sleep over it for one night. And maybe it's not even that silly in the end. But I think giving the children a certain level of agency and of a voice in this whole process will make them compromise much more in the end, because they feel like a part of this whole process and not just we are being taken somewhere and put somewhere else, but they are a part of the decision. They are a part of the process, and that makes them compromise much more.
And so that same thing could still work. So if a client comes to you and says, we're on purpose want to move to another country for a year or for 4 years or indefinitely, that's a similar process you would recommend to them, I assume, is like involve your kids in that process as early as possible. And also there's going to be emotions there.
Yes.
For them. Yeah. And just like your daughter, and I think maybe everyone, I don't want to leave. They have to start mourning the fact that they're leaving a place that they might feel very comfortable or attached to. And so maybe run through that process, like what you would tell your clients. Did you know that House of Peregrine has an app? It is full of resources, information, and products to make life as an international more connected and more intentional. As a member of House of Peregrine, you also now have access to exclusive discounts, products, guides, and events to make life more fun and connected. Simply download the app at houseofperegrine.com and save it to your home screen. Okay, back to the show.
Yeah. I mean, I really think that transparency in this whole process is one of the most important elements to secure the children's feeling of safety and stability. And safety, stability is one of the core needs that every human being has, right after the physiological needs that a person has. There is this need for safety and stability, and those mobile children, they don't really have much of this safety and stability if we move them around all the time. So I think this transparency and the element of predictability for them at least gives them some part of safety, because they know I can rely on the information that my parents give me. And if we as parents decide, oh no, we're not going to tell them, it's just going to upset them, we'll just wait until 3 weeks before. I mean, these children will be shaken in the foundations of their lives if we wait too long. So I really think that starting early on, being transparent, gives them the feeling of they are able to rely on us more than if we just shock them with the information and with this live move too short in advance. And
I think it comes from a good place. I think it's like, we don't want to hurt our kids. We don't want to prolong their suffering. And also maybe we're afraid of hurting them in the end. And so maybe it comes from a place of protection, maybe not involving them.
Of course.
But I think when we spoke before, you had something really lovely. Like, we really need to move through this process of processing together. And also it's important to show your own emotions, from what I understand. Yeah.
I think, yes, as parents, we are always so very scared of hurting our children, especially if it's the decisions we take for them. And nevertheless, this process of saying goodbye and grieving is a very important one. And grief is such a powerful word and emotion at the same time, but it's just such a natural process. I mean, we only grieve those things that were valuable to us, that we loved. So grief is actually a good emotion, because there was something that we loved and that we now need to leave. So the grief is just a natural part of this loving someone. And I think, and I mean, it is proven that letting out the grief helps you process it. And if we don't let it out or don't process it, it remains unprocessed. And that is one of the major mental health challenge for third culture kids when they grow up, when they are adults, this unprocessed grief. So I think as a family, the most important thing is to model. I mean, as a mom or as a dad, also show them that you are sad. Don't just swallow down all the emotions. Let them come out as well. Cry in front of your children if you are sad about something that is concerned with the transition. And just modeling that it's okay, that you do not have to be ashamed of being sad. Because oftentimes these TCKs, these mobile children, they have the impression that they're not allowed to mourn something because they're so privileged, right? They are, I mean, everybody always tells them, oh, you're so privileged. You're seeing the world. You have so many benefits from this life. So if they mourn something in this whole process, they feel like, oh, I shouldn't be. This is not okay to do that. So really making it clear to the kids, it's okay. We lose something. So I'm sad too. And then like this, with this process of grieving and saying goodbye, finding closure in a posting is also really important to being able to start anew in a new country and in a new place. So this is one of the most important processes, I think, for mobile families. There's this whole concept that was developed once by some famous authors, which is called RAFT. I don't know whether you've heard about that.
No, tell us.
RAFT stands for reconciliation, that you should never leave a place with any open issues, that you should always reconcile, repair broken friendships, say sorry, and never leave with unresolved conflicts. Then the A stands for affirmation, that you in your old country really express the appreciation that you had for the people who were there during your journey. The F is for farewell, which is what I talked about already, to really celebrate the farewell and make room for any kind of events that allow this farewell to places, to people, to your school. Introduce some rituals with the children to say farewell to certain places. And then the T also already stands for thinking destination, which means that discuss about your new destination, inform yourself, get your kids to research some activities on the internet that you can do in the new destination, maybe even start learning some words in the new language to give you a smoother start once you arrive there. So this process raft, they call it. And it has been around for a while. And I think it's a good starting point to develop something for your own family. It's always, you know your family and your children best, right? So it's always, what do your kids need in this whole process? And but I think it's important to be aware of it and to think of ways on how to integrate all these elements of reconciliation, affirmation, saying goodbye, and then already looking at the destination or looking towards the destination.
And I want to know, are there any rituals that you recommend to your clients or that you've done yourself that you could maybe give us?
Mm-hmm. I mean, rituals, I would always recommend for families with children, especially if they're going not only international schools, but any schools, to really move or try to time the move to a point either in the summer or depending on where you are in winter, where the school year ends. So because usually at the end of the school year, the international schools, they have some special events. They give out some certificates, some leavers certificates or some leavers presents. And the class teachers, sometimes they make some memory books for those kids who leave. So I think that is something to keep in mind, not to pull out your children in the midst of March because the employer says so, but maybe even reflect, would it be possible for one of the parents to stay behind with the kids, and then the employee can already move on. So really to find the moment to make this cut, to go from one country to the other, which allows the kids some closure in the old country. And then farewell parties, I would suggest, of course, what I used to do with my kids. We always took a last tour through our house. I mean, we took a tour through the city. We left during the pandemic, so we just did it in the car. We couldn't see anybody last time. So we took a tour to our most loved places in the city, and we kind of said goodbye to those places and maybe see you again one day. And then on the very last day, when the house is really already empty, we took a tour and I filmed it so they can watch it afterwards again. We took a tour through the whole house and we said goodbye to each room, and we shared some memories that we had in these rooms, and we said goodbye to the guest room and thank you for hosting all our guests that came to visit us in Kyrgyzstan. And this is a tradition, a ritual that we have. And I must say, I cry every single time now, even that I look at this video when we walk through the house. The kids were 3 years younger and they were just so cute walking through this house and saying goodbye to all the rooms. And it still makes me sad. It still makes me emotional. But I like that ritual to say goodbye to the house and to thank for the nice years. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think when I hear, that's so lovely, by the way, thank you for sharing. I think these sorts of things are so important for parents, because when you're in the thick of these decisions, you can't always come up with this stuff on your own. And so I really love it when people who are having this experience ahead of us with wisdom can share. We can share together when we're in the midst of, because it's a lot to do to move internationally. You can't always think about these things that in hindsight are actually the most important things.
Yeah. Maybe
are there any
down before moving? I mean, maybe you could even years before or sit down before you move, before the whole stress begins, as you said, with the containers and with the moving boxes, and really sit down with your kids and think of ways they would need on how to say goodbye and how to find this closure and to go through this process.
Yeah, it's really nice. And of course, every family is different and every situation is different. Yeah. But I think, again, this is our life, whether it's not, in the same house, we have our own, and when I think third culture kids, I also think cultures have rituals. cultures have things they do. And so I'm always very interested to hear what people who are doing this life, even if it's across the world, are incorporating, because, you only get a certain amount of chances to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I thank you for sharing that. I think that's really, really beautiful. So that is a really lovely process of leaving a place. You guys are doing it. This is my last question about this, and then I want to move on to arriving in the new place. But when you have the structure you have, which is the Swiss government kind of telling you have 4 years, so you kind of expect it, what would you suggest for families who are maybe moving by their own accord? They stay in a place as long as it suits them. How would you maybe recommend involving kids in the decision to stay or leave? Is there something you'd recommend, or some insight maybe you could offer when it's not quite as regimented as yours? And it seems like yours is coming at a pace your kids can kind of expect. That's not always the case.
No. Yeah. Still I deem it important to really involve the kids already at that point when you start thinking about moving on. And of course, your children will probably say, no, I don't want to move. Because, depending on how long you've lived in a place, I guess usually kids, they feel at home, they feel settled. And so they would probably not want to leave voluntarily a certain place. So I would start by also explaining the reasons why and how it feels for you as a parent, and what is the underlying emotion for you to even think of leaving this place, why it's important to you as a parent, and then really take the children's concerns seriously. Of course, they will be scared of closing this one chapter and moving to somewhere completely new, and just validating this fear. It's obvious that a child is scared of moving to a place they've never seen before, and they cannot even imagine what it looks like. So they're just Googling some pictures to make it more graspable. Is that even a word? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
to make it more realistic for them. And that's always something I laugh about. Whenever we get to know our next posting, family and relatives ask my children, so are you looking forward to whatever country? And they're like, no. And then I say, of course not. Okay, they have no idea where they're going. They have no idea what the streets look like, what the school looks like. So how are they looking forward to something this uncertain for them? And I think there it's important to take it seriously, that they are uncertain and that it's an uncertainty for them, and that they will never look forward to that. I would never expect the kids to say, oh, yes, let's do it. Because it's just this reasonable decision for us based on our needs that we want to move around. They don't see it that way. They just see, we need to leave this place. We need to leave our school. We need to leave our friends. So being open, transparent. Yeah.
Yeah. As you said, it would be kind of terrifying if they said, yeah, let's go. It would be actually mean they were in a hard place. Maybe they weren't enjoying their lives. So maybe it's actually a testament to how much they're enjoying their lives that they don't want to leave. So I think that's a very nice way of seeing this, what we're imposing on them. And also, in a way, do you find, I have found in my own life that the kids do take a bit of the brunt of that move. They're the ones that are in the new school. They're the ones that have to maybe sometimes learn a language if you're depending on which schools you decide on. And so it really is, we're asking a lot of them. And that is true, I think. And that's the perspective I've tried to give my own kids is, you guys are doing something really, really hard. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you for learning a language, or, so I think it's really important that we as parents have that perspective, not to hold us back, but just to recognize that our kids are doing something really big. And I think it's really beautiful, actually. Okay. So I want to talk about, I feel like we can talk about now your book. So is this your book, Goodbye Again? Mm-hmm. You wrote it. Tell me why you wrote it, and tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. I'm a book person. So whenever I need to learn something, whenever I'm interested in a topic, I buy a book. So when we first started moving around with children, I wanted to buy a children's book for my kids to read to them and to being able to raise discussions around this topic. And even when they were much smaller, to just have it in their ears and in their heads that this is something that is affecting their life as well. And there is not so much out there really for third culture kids, for children who move on a regular basis. There is books on grief or on leaving a place, moving in a normal way, like moving within a country to a different house. But I was never happy with all the resources that they were out there. So at some point during a break between two university careers, I decided if there's nothing out there, maybe I should write something. And I always had this lovely idea in the back of my head. And then I wrote this book, and it's in rhyme form because I really like to write in rhymes. And I think it's a lovely resource for families to start the whole discussion. And it's suitable for children, I would say, from 3. My daughter is 11. She still loves to look at it and to read it. And it has some resources in the end for parents as well. So it explains the raft, and it has some theory in the end for parents to read about it just a little bit. And so it's a hard project of mine to write this book. And yeah, it was illustrated by my sister, who's a lay illustrator. She just loves to draw. So it is kind of a family project as well. It brought us a little closer together as sisters as well, working long distance on this project together. And I'm very happy that it's out there and that there is another resource for parents that they can rely on. And it's called Goodbye Again. And it goes through this whole goodbye process. There's a family and they have to leave in one place and have to go to a new place. And it includes all these emotions that we talked about, right? The one child, the protagonist, she doesn't want to leave because she likes the food in this country. And so it follows this family, and it follows their conversations and how they deal with this whole farewell process.
That's great. So if you're thinking of leaving a place, this could be an amazing resource to start the conversation or to validate children's feelings.
Yeah.
That are natural, normal, and actually probably a good thing. And I really love how you frame grief as that. Okay. So you've gone through the process. You've done the tour of the house. Your containers are packed. What's next in this process from do you tell your clients?
Yeah, I mean, usually for most families, there's kind of this limbo state in between one country and the other. So, I mean, we usually camp in my in-laws' house for a few weeks, which is not always the best idea, I have to admit. And during this limbo state.
And why is that? Why is that? So you go to the grandparents' place just to kind of wait for everything to arrive, and maybe it gives you a sense of just being able to not worry about every little thing for a minute, not an apartment between.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Okay. I mean, not necessarily just to wait for the stuff to arrive, because that is usually not the case, that the stuff already arrives while we are away. But I mean, usually we go visit the grandparents in the summer anyway. So the limbo state in between transitions is just a little bit of a longer holiday with the grandparents. And for my children now already, it's nice to have this routine as well. They are used to going to the grandparents' house every summer. They know the house. They know the rules in this house. So it's kind of maintaining some traditions and routines as well, even during this limbo state, which gives them a little bit of stability, at least during this state where really everything is in the air. Their stuff is somewhere in a container, somewhere on an ocean. And so I think trying to maintain some level of routine even during this state is really important as well. Even if it's just the same breakfast they eat at home every morning, make them the same breakfast as well during that limbo state. So I think that's important. And then when it comes to arriving in your new location, I would always recommend not arriving too early, because usually the children don't know anybody, you don't know anybody, so they will just be there, be bored, and start hating the place, I fear. I would always recommend to arrive maybe a week before school starts, because usually international schools, other schools maybe as well, they have these welcoming events for new families, and that is already the first entry point for the children to meet new kids in a more less structured environment so that they're not too scared to go there on their first day of school, where there's really just all new faces, all new teachers, all new building. I always like to go and try meet somebody from school already before we start in a new school, so that they have at least this one familiar face that they can turn to when they start in a new school. Yeah, I think arriving early enough, but not too early. Then one thing that I think is really important, and that is more for smaller children, for all children, but maybe more important for smaller children. I would always, when you get your container and your belongings, always set up their room first, so that finally, after this whole limbo state, finally they're back in their room with their own furniture in the best case, with their stuffed toys, with their blankets, and then slowly move on to the rest of the house, but really focus on the kids' rooms first. And what is really, really important, and I know that this is not always possible for all families, is that one of the parents should be really very present in the first few months. And maybe for dual career couples, it is really difficult to take some time off work or to reduce the workload in the first few weeks. But I think it's really valuable because the children, as you said, they're going through so many changes in these first few weeks or months, that I think having the stability of having one parent at home and not a nanny or a babysitter who is new as well, usually, I think I deem that really important, that one parent is there and is present for them and makes the time to just accompany them during this first phase of settling in a new place.
Yeah.
Oh,
and how do you
do you
count?
Sorry.
No, it's okay. So tell me how you would advise. So let's say, because the normal model for this type of, if you do assignments every 4 years, is to have one that's more, you're moving for, and they're kind of in the new job. And then there's what some people call the trailing spouse or the supporting spouse. And that seems clear who's going to do the supporting role. But what is there anything you can recommend to maybe couples who don't have that clear of a delineation? Is it like one would take Monday half the week and the other would take the other half, so maybe they can both settle in their careers or their new work? Or is there something you can suggest that you've seen work if it's not such a clear delineation?
I mean, from my experience, also from my research that I did for my master's, it turned out that both parents usually cover different aspects of a child's life. So this is just stereotypes, but for example, the mother is more of the nurturing person. They go to their mom when they get hurt or when they need to talk about something that is very emotional. And the dad is more the player. They like to play football or I don't know what. And it turns out that both parts are really important. They complement each other. So it's not really possible to make this split, this clear split between, okay, you are responsible for the kids and I'm just responsible for my office. It's important that both parents are there. For these first few weeks or months, I would say it doesn't really matter whether it's just one of the parents or both of the parents who split up the task. So if both of the parents are working, maybe both of them can try to just go home from the office a little earlier than usually. And just when you are at home, actually be present and not take out your work laptop again or your phone and write work emails again, but just take these 2-3 hours between your end of work and the kids going to sleep and be there for the kids and be present. And I think then if they feel seen and heard, it doesn't really matter whether it's really hours in the afternoon or it's these 2 hours that you can give as a parent.
And actually just recognizing that it's actually a transition period, I think is super, I think it's relevant, but it's also, maybe it'll help to know it's not forever. The kids are not going to expect or need you to be as present, but just making that time in those first weeks or months will make all the difference for the transition going well. I think that's important. So you would estimate, what would you say is the average time for a kid? So as much time as you can give, obviously, but
maybe just at least a couple of weeks, the kids would need more your presence. And then maybe a month would be amazing. And then you can kind of settle back into whatever routine you had before you moved. And the kids will,
I think already just to cover this, even the logistics in the beginning, the really just accompanying them, finding the bus in the morning to go to school, and how to get a bus ticket, or these administrative and logistical issues to take their hand and take them along, and so they are not so uncertain about how their everyday life works. So I think that is already one really important phase that they shouldn't be alone with all these new tasks. And then as a parent, you always have to be aware that this whole grieving process and this whole arriving process, they jump back and forth between the different phases, right? There is different, we have anger, and we have sadness, and we have denial and acceptance at some point, but it's not like a linear process. It's like they're jumping back and forth, and children, they express it in a different way anyway. So you never really know. And I think really being there, validating, hearing them, seeing them, you know your child the best as well. So you know if something is not really going the way they are usually going. And then maybe just paying attention to that and trying to sit down or trying to be there. I think that's, most important.
And I think that we hear, at least I've heard so often, oh, kids are resilient. They don't mind. They just want to be around kids. But that, I just think it's untrue and unwise to not realize this, and in ourselves as well, right? Like, I love how you're giving us that insight into our kids wanting to know us, right? They just want to know us in our grief, in our thing. They want to know how we're taking this.
Yeah.
I just had an example of this with my own daughter, where my sister had sent me a package from the US and she was homesick from school that day. And I opened the package and I was crying because she sent me something very like that she knew me and sister. And she said, "Mommy, I never see you cry." And I said, "Oh, well, I live across the ocean from my sister." And it occurred to me in that moment that I was not doing what you're suggesting. I was trying to be strong and positive all the time. And because I didn't want them to think their life was less here for somehow. But I think it really gave her an insight into my own life. And, it was unexpectedly very connecting for her to see me in that moment, missing my sister.
What a beautiful moment.
So, So
I think this whole thing of resilience, which is really, really important to talk about, but we cannot just expect our children to be resilient. We play a part in that. Resilience is is bouncing back from adversity. And you can train resilience, but you need a supportive parent and a modeling parent on your side to being able to learn this. Kids are not just born resilient. They develop this skill and they train their resilience muscle over time by looking at us, by seeing how we react, by learning how to deal with a difficult situation or with a difficult emotion. So, yeah.
And our kids get the opportunity to do that maybe more often.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the beautiful thing of moving with kids. They can really become much more resilient than other children maybe, but they need help to become resilient and to train that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That is such a nice, it's a nice thing to realize, right? Is that you're not born resilient. I love that.
No.
So that's a lot of times, so there's a big difference between, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is there's two types of, within that type of people who don't want to stay in one place. I think there's, again, at least 2 or 3 types of people. So there's people that move by choice, people that move with a company, and like immigration, people who move because of war or famine, and they all have a lot in common. What would you say is a framework for that? Like, why are we doing this? What makes us different as a family? My kids will always say this, we just feel different, because my kids go to a local school. They go to a local Dutch school, and they say, we just feel different. Why do we have to be different? And so how do you explain that gene to kids, would you say? Like, is there some way to make it special or explain, third culture kids is a very beautiful distinction. But how do you describe culture adults to kids?
I mean, I think that's a difficult question. I think it's important to allow yourself to be different and to give yourself a label. I mean, for children, they don't want to be different, right? They want to be the same as everybody else. And then they don't feel self-confident if they're different from the others. So trying to give them some kind of identity, and even if it's just your family's identity, like we're the Aegerters and this is how we do it, and we got this mantra and this is our hymn. I mean, if it is really so important to children to being able to grasp this identity, then I would really suggest making your family an identity. Drawing your own. They can draw your own like family. You know how previously in earlier times families had this, I don't know the word in English,
a crest or a coat of arms.
Yes, exactly. So why not have them draw a coat of arms of your family, including everything that they think makes your family and is important for your family. And so try to establish the identity in other ways, and then keep talking about it and keep mentioning it. But you're an Aegerter. That's what you are. And you have this identity. And the other ones are the, I don't know, Millers. And so trying to give them something to hold on to when it comes to their identity, instead of leaving them flying somewhere in the room without having anything to grasp onto. I think is important.
And what we've done is really, we have two kind of distinctions of friends. And so there's friends, our neighbors, our school friends, and then there's the people that have moved from abroad. And so that's what I've noticed just naturally happens, is that we're in 2 or 3 different communities at the same time.
Yeah.
And so the friends that are from other countries end up operating more like our family would if we were near family. We're kind of all in the same boat. We have, understandings, and we help each other out without question. And then we have our neighbors, which are also lovely, but they don't quite understand what we're doing. Right. So our lives are so different, and we have different pressures and different things. And so that's how we've kind of solved it over the years. But of course, that's a very transitory group. Like we have a turnover every few years. Even though we've lived here nearly 6 years, we've had maybe 3 or 4 groups of friends that have moved on. And so I think there's comfort in that, but there's just a knowing there that kids are like, I just like them. That's my friend. My kids will make friends at camp and be like, I just like them. And I find out, their parents are from abroad. And so
this is then the same mindset again that they have. Yeah, I think it's just important to make it clear to the kids that there is different types of people. I mean, we go back to Switzerland. We have friends in Switzerland. They've lived in Switzerland their whole lives. They have no understanding or clue about our life here, how it feels to always have to look for a new hairdresser, a new dentist every 4 years. They have no idea what this all means, but still we're friends and they're our best friends. So we go back to Switzerland, we see them every time. And they don't compete with each other. You can have these type of friends and these type of friends. And I think it's important to model it to the kids. You can be friends with this type of people and this type of people, and also encourage them to be acceptive of everybody, no matter how they are. And that is a general skill, I guess, that a lot of people should be learning in our world today. But
our kids get more practice than others, I would say, which I love, actually.
True.
We have to have, and I would say that's the gift. And the thing is, I have a different, and I would be interested to see what your research says about this. I feel like I have overall a different relationship with my kids because of what we're doing together as a family than I would otherwise. So having that, I think I shared with you before, but there was a moment when we first moved here where my 5-year-old was like, Mommy, what do you know? Because I just kept saying, I don't know. He'd say, what's this? And he said, Mommy, what do you know? And I thought, that's right. I went from knowing everything to knowing very little.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
And so I think that in that moment, it encapsulates a change in our relationship that will remain through their life. And I'm wondering if you have any research on that, or any insight, maybe even from your own life, about the difference maybe it makes in a dynamic of a family to be living this way.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I did actually. I did some interviews with adult third culture kids on this whole topic, and it was a long interview. And I also asked them about this topic. And so the nuclear family is, for TCKs, is much more important because that is basically their foundation. Their foundation, one of the pillars of their stability is the nuclear family, because they don't have such close relationships usually to the extended family. They have to say goodbye to friends all the time. So this close family, mom, dad, siblings, is usually their base and their pillar. That changes a little bit with age. I mean, usually around teenage years, early teenage years, the nuclear family, the importance shifts a little bit from family to peers, to friends. That is why at that point, moving with kids is a little more complicated and more emotional, I would say. But the nuclear family, for the persons I talk to, remained important throughout their entire life. I mean, I talked to these adult third culture kids and I asked them to define the concept of home, because home, they don't relate it to a geographical location, right? So I always ask them, so how do you define home for yourself? And most of them said, it's where my parents are. One of them told me, my parents now live in Astana in Kazakhstan. I've never been there, but I flew there. I came to their apartment. They were both there and I was at home. And so I think that's important to know, that you as a family, you are their home. And you can have your home in your heart. I guess that's what I always say. I have my home in my heart and I take it wherever I go. And I can be home everywhere. Yeah.
That is such a lovely place to land. And I think such a notion that it brings me a lot of comfort, actually, is that we're not taking something from them or making their life. Of course, we all know that we're adding so much to their life, but I think that notion that you're home to your kids and that is something that we found over time is very comforting, but also just a beautiful, beautiful thing, a way to live a life. So I think that's a great place for us to wrap up. But I really want people to know how to reach you. I want people, we'll try and feature your book, Goodbye Again, by Katja Aegerter. And people can buy that on Amazon, anywhere you buy books. People can reach out through Instagram, through mobilefamily.support is your Insta. And then your website, mobilefamily.support. Why would I reach out to you? Would you be able to offer insight or coaching on this process and more? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'm a psychologist and I do research on this topic. And I just, as you heard, I love to talk about this topic. And I really want to raise parents' awareness, because I think that the family is a whole system, and that the more parents know and the more tools parents have in their box, the better they can deal with all the challenges that come along with the mobility with children. And it makes them more confident also to take these decisions. I mean, as you said earlier, there is probably parents who think about moving away and then they say, oh no, but it's not good for our kids. Let's just leave it. And I think, no, do it. But just get yourself informed, know what it means for your kids, and take them along and give the support they need. So that's what I do. I mean, if parents come to me, I hold courses. So I teach all the theory and I hold live sessions. And I created this online course now, which will be available soon, just to inform parents. And they can just reach out to me if they want to know, what does it all mean? How can we deal with it? And I mean, this is my life. My passion is to support the families along their journey, because this life comes with a lot of benefits. And I know now we just mostly talked about the challenges, but this is such a beautiful journey for a family, and especially for the children. And informing yourself as a parent just brings out the benefits more, because you know how to deal with the challenges. So that's why I do what I do, and I love it.
Yeah, you want everyone to be able to live the life they want. And so that's really beautiful.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If anyone would like to buy Katja's book, it's Goodbye Again. Her Insta is mobilefamily.support and her website is mobilefamily.support.
thank you again. And I'm forever going to remember that home is where my parents is. That you just changed my life. So.
Oh, I'm glad. See, already one life changed.
That's
in one
right.
sentence. That's lovely. Thank you so much, Mickelle, for giving me the opportunity to talk about my most favorite topic.
Okay, that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed our show. For the latest insights on living internationally, join us at houseofperegrine.com to find out how you can connect with our community. Let's craft our life story with intention together.